back to Typecast Heroes, where we believe typology can save the world. I'm Jessie Miller.
And I'm Amanda Fogelson, and today we are focusing on the type ENTP. Just a little bit of background about Typecast Heroes. We are participating in this project, have created this project really, where we are trying to get 100 of each of the 16 personality types for a data set on a podcast that will be released sometime in 2020, before the end of the year. And if you want to know a little bit more about the project and all the details that go into it, we have our very first video called Welcome to Typecast Heroes that's up. Give us some grace on that. We were quarantined and it was rough. But we do have an update. It's called Project Update, easy enough. And if you go watch that video, you can kind of see where we currently are with our project and where we hope to be. I'll give you all the information. So that being said, just to kick off this video, we always like to just give this little tip in each video that anybody can be anything, and we truly wholeheartedly believe that. That being said, make sure that you know who you are at your core and who you are on your default setting, because there are a lot of stereotypes out there. There are a lot of similarities between certain types, and what we don't want is to be explaining a function or an example of an ENTP that we know, and someone else is watching this and they're like, oh, I've done that before, so I'm an ENTP. That might not be the case. You're a human being and you're relating to other human beings, just as we all do. So again, just check in with yourself, make sure you know who you are, research the functions on your own. We have plenty of videos out there on that as well. And welcome. Happy to have you here.
So like Amanda said, we have lots of resources on our channel. We have videos for all 8 cognitive functions. We also have a MBTI for beginners playlist that you can watch. They're quick videos, they're 10 to 15 minutes to explain what those 4 letters mean. There's also a 15-minute video on the history of the Myers-Briggs test itself, so you can learn all of the things that you need to understand what we're about to talk about. So when we talk about the Myers-Briggs test and the code that it gives you, which makes you an ENTP, we talk about your cognitive stack. So with your cognitive stack, again, go watch that video if you haven't seen it already. You have 4 functions in the top of your ego. And so this makes up how you take in information and how you make decisions. So for the ENTP, you have an Extroverted Intuition hero, or heroine if you are a female. So that means that you are primarily leading through life with this kind of explorative tendencies. So you want to go and you want to choose all of the ideas. You want to see all of the ideas possible. You want to see all of the possibilities. You want to go and collect all of these opportunities, and you are just running through life collecting all of the things, right? You want all of them. And because of this, you have a tendency to also drop ideas very quickly. So you'll pick up an idea for a little bit of time and then you'll drop one. And this makes you very open-minded. It makes you very creative. You are an out-of-the-box thinker. Some of the most innovative inventions come from ENTPs because of that extroverted intuition and that tendency to see something and to instantly know all of the possibilities of what that object or that problem could be. And so when it comes to ideas, ENTPs are really some of the best at truly novel thought. Some of the other traits that we tend to associate with extroverted intuition, or that extroverted intuition as a mental process tends to lend itself toward, is outside thinking. So you need to brainstorm aloud with others. So often this means that ENTPs can unfairly be labeled as kind of flighty, because they will throw out an idea and then they'll drop it. But really what they're doing is when an intuitive would be running through ideas inside their mind, so they brainstorm aloud with you. So it's very important for an extroverted intuitive to have people to be able to kind of bounce ideas off of, because they enjoy, again, thinking out loud, talking out loud, and it's often through that external process that they come to their novel ideas or their quite innovative ideas and conclusions. Something else that they do is they like to collect lots of different abstract concepts and theories and put them together with other ones that don't necessarily go together or seem to for the average person. So they can have these very out-of-the-box, just really concepts, just out-of-the-box concepts that nobody else would think of.
That kind of seem like they appear out of literally like nowhere, out of thin air. But they're such good ideas that you kind of look at them like, how could you know, like, what made you think of that? you would say that to ENTP for sure.
To balance out the ENTP, because if they were truly just completely extroverted, running around and looking for just novelty and newness and experience, then that would make for a not very balanced person. So to balance them, they have in their parent function, which is where we tend to find our should statements. It tends to make us responsible. It tends to make us focus on the attitude that is opposite of us. So for an ENTP, they are an extrovert, so this is an introverted process. So they have introverted thinking. Introverted thinking is when you create a logical framework inside yourself and you are running things through it to say, does this make sense to me? Does this make sense to my framework? Because it's in the parent function, it can be kind of compulsive. Like the ENTP feels like they have to answer to their introverted thinking function, that they have to do what makes sense to them at the end of the day. Introverted thinking can make it really hard for an ENTP to work for somebody else, which is why ENTPs really thrive in an environment where they can be their own boss or they can at least have a lot of control, because introverted thinking does not care about the collective thought process or does not put as much emphasis on the collective thought process, because it really does make sure that these things are true to the person, that they make sense to them. This framework can take a lot of time to build, so it can be very personal to the ENTP. So when somebody is attacking their framework, y'all, do not attack an ENTP.
Watch out.
Unless you are ready for battle. I mean,
You have to know that you are right before you go up to an ENTP and try to prove that. Like, you have to know. You have to be able to prove it. It's not like TI can't change, but it takes time and it takes so much proof. So much proof.
So one of the things for an ENTP, because they lead with extroverted intuition first, is they can accept new ideas into their framework relatively quickly, but what isn't quick is the actual building of the framework. So they can accept an idea, but they can't accept, they would have a much more difficult time changing the premises of certain arguments that they've established are important to them. So yes, they can be very open-minded. Yes, they can be quick to accept new ideas, but that actual logical framework, which is what Amanda was referencing, that itself is very difficult to break because they spend a lot of time building it throughout their life. So when you come at an ENTP with a new idea, one of the things that they have a tendency to do, if their introverted thinking is very strong, is they can pick apart your ideas super fast, like a piranha. Like there's no meat left on that one after you're done if you have not thought it out. Because introverted thinking gives you the ability to really break down an argument and to break down and examine all of the pieces. So I have a very dear ENTP friend of mine, and she will ask me a series of leading questions, and I can already feel it coming. She's leading me down this road to see why my logic is super screwed up, because I have a TI child, so I'm kind of in awe of the TI parent. And she's doing it out of the best interest of my heart, or of her heart, to make sure that I am going the right direction in things. But she's going to lead me through this great logical set of questions to help me get to the conclusion that she sees. But it's interesting that that is the way that introverted thinking can show up, because it's like they want you to get to that conclusion yourself, but they don't want to just tell you what to do. It's like they want to guide you on this path. So one of the reasons that introverted thinking is so kind of people-focused in this instance is because ENTPs are a judging bridge type, which means they have another judging function in their third. So for the ENTP, that is extroverted feeling in the third function. That means that they can use introverted thinking and extroverted feeling almost equally if they've developed both of these functions. It's just the way they present have different types of tendencies associated with them because of where they fall in the stack. So the third function is the child function, and that can be sort of bratty or immature. It can also be naive and playful and innocent. So for extroverted feeling in that third function for an ENTP, this is where, as they get older especially, they can be very caring, very focused on people, very much concerned with the beliefs and values of everyone around them. And so one of the ways that they can do that they can indulge in that extroverted feeling process is through introverted thinking. Is sharing that logical process with you, like I was talking about with my dear friend. She's trying to help me see things because she cares about me, because she's an extroverted feeler, and she can lead me through to my own conclusions, kind of guide me as a parent function would do. Something else to mention about that introverted thinking parent, though, is that it makes them very fiercely independent. They probably care very little about what society as a whole thinks of them. Now, if you are one of their people, if you're a person that an ENTP cares a lot about, they very much value your opinion because of that extroverted feeling child. So especially when ENTPs are younger, and I counter this on the internet all the time, ENTPs want to tell me that they don't care what anybody thinks. Okay. You can say that if you want to.
All you want.
And maybe you are somebody who truly does not care what anybody thinks. But the overarching pattern for a cognitive function stack like ENTPs would lend itself towards the behavior of caring about what people think, whether you like it or not. So it's a feeling of you want the people around you to
feel good around you.
Yeah, to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you are younger, that extroverted feeling function can come out in ways that you are not really conscious of. So you could be pushing boundaries. So that's when you would maybe tell an inappropriate joke that you shouldn't, or that you shouldn't according to society, to see what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or to ask a lot of questions about something that you may not even be all that invested in, just because you really want to know how people are going to react. That's also a characteristic of extroverted feeling child. Sometimes this can come across as that keyboard warrior type of thing, where you're online and you're pushing out all sorts of outrageous statements, again, just to see what would happen. Because if an ENTP is particularly extroverted, and they are also young or immature in their type development, that means that they are jumping between extroverted intuition down to extroverted feeling, and they are skipping that introverted thinking process. And they really just want to know what people are going to do.
Yep.
They are very interested in understanding and relating and identifying the values of the collective. And so sometimes that can come out in really crazy ways. It can also come across as people pleasing. Like they really want to make the people around them happy, and they really want that external validation. So it can manifest in many different ways. But what I can tell you is if you have an ENTP in your life and they are somebody who cares about you, then they really do care. Their love language probably looks different from yours. Their ability to explain their emotions, it's probably not very easy. It doesn't come easy for them. But they are wired to care about their people. And it, again, may not look like what you expect, particularly if you're an introverted feeler. But that doesn't make it any less valid. So I always say that ENTPs, like my very dear ENTP friend, she will hear out my ideas and then she will share hundreds of thoughts on those ideas. And that takes time, that takes effort for an ENTP, and they have a million other things they could be doing. So if an ENTP is showing you that they care by taking the time to think about your ideas and to point out the flaws in your logic or to point out the possibilities that you can't see, that is incredibly valuable.
And that's their love language. That's them showing it's not cuddling on the couch and watching romantic movies, but
Though they can like that.
Absolutely. But that's something to note. If you are involved with an ENTP or you have a deep friendship with an ENTP or anything like that, like you recognize those moments where they are showing you, they're almost showing you like their inner world, like who they really are when they are sharing their opinions. And truly, they won't do it unless they actually care to help you see something. Mm-hmm. So they're not poking holes or doing that to be rude or to say that your idea isn't good or anything like that. But if they can see something that can help you and they care about you, they want to give you that information. And to them, that is very personal for them to put it out there in the world like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes ENTPs can, like I said, they can take to the internet and they can pick apart everybody's ideas without ever sharing any of theirs. Mm-hmm. And to them, that ability to do that comes from that introverted thinking parent function and that extroverted feeling child. It's like the two of those things work in tandem to make them very curious about how people are thinking. So if you're on the other end of that, it can sometimes feel very... it can feel like they're being aggressive. Mm-hmm. But what you need to understand about ENTPs is even in that state, even in that immature state where they're just like tearing you apart on the internet, or they are, saying the most outrageous things to see what the reaction, they're not doing it because they're evil or somehow deranged or twisted. they're doing it because they have extroverted intuition process and they are curious and they are exploring. And so I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. I'm trying to explain it to you, because I feel like ENTPs are, the MBTI community typically considers ENTPs to be they have a terrible reputation.
Yes.
And ENTPs, some of them kind of own up to it and they're like, yeah, I'm that way, I don't really care.
So many of them. And they just kind of like, they don't fight the stereotype at all. They just accept it and they just want to, they lean into it almost and they just go with it. And
and you can say, like I mentioned, you can say that you really don't care about people or that you're not interested in any of these things, but at the end of the day, you do have that extroverted feeling third. And so it's something that you have to acknowledge.
And again, that third can look like a brat. Like it can completely look like a brat. And that's kind of how it shows up, like a brat sometimes with an ENTP. It's just by saying like, oh yeah, you're right. No, I don't care about anybody. I don't care about anyone. Yeah.
But when you get older, and for me, like, my friend really turned around what ENTPs look like, because, and since then, I met her in February, since then I've had literally over 100 interactions with ENTPs, and they've proven it over and over and over again that they can be incredibly caring, incredibly devoted, and very much empathetic because of that extroverted feeling child, because they want to be there with you. They want to hurt with you if you're hurting. And something else that can happen to ENTPs because of that extroverted feeling third function is they can often get used a lot and not even realize it's happening, because something I've seen, and this happens with ENFPs as well, but ENTPs too, and INTPs, anybody who has extroverted intuition in their first two functions, they throw out a lot of good ideas. And so what I've heard from my ENTPs is, my ENTP friend, is that people will come to her for ideas, and then she'll spend all of this time invested in them and helping them come up with new ideas or new possibilities. And then the people just assume, because she's not an introverted feeler and her emotions don't look like, they're not on the forefront. They'll just assume that she's fine, and like they'll say, okay, cool, thank you for all of these ideas. I'm taking them from you now, and now I'm going to run off and go do whatever I want to do. And that's really hurtful, because they're a person, right? Yeah. And they're a person too. Like they have these amazing ideas. They have so much to give to society, but at the end of the day, they have needs and thoughts and feelings. ENTPs have feelings, even if you are doing your keyboard warrior phase. ENTPs have feelings just like everybody else, and those need tended too. So sometimes just being there and hearing out those crazy ideas from ENTPs can be incredibly valuable and helpful. So the last function for an ENTP is that introverted sensing inferior function. So the inferior function is the thing that we tend to get defensive about. It's the thing that human beings tend to feel insecure about or have anxiety about. So introverted sensing is, if extroverted intuition is all future-based, possibility-based, talking about things going forward out of the box, introverted sensing is very much the box. It is the way things have it's the experiences and all of the knowledge that a person has accumulated in regards to their life. So it's like their very specific, unique lens of looking at life. And for an ENTP, this is what can ground them to reality. But if an ENTP hasn't spent time building up this function and hasn't spent time learning how to make peace with this function, it can come out in very negative ways. So for instance, it can come out as bashing people who live a conventional life because, well, I'm an ENTP and routine's just not for me and I'm too good for this. Or it can come off as the ENTP has difficulty adulting. Some of them who struggle to fill out, and by that I don't mean that they're not successful. They can be incredibly successful, but their Achilles heel can be something as simple as a tax form. Just one fact on a tax form can throw them off because they're not detail oriented, or they tend to be not detail oriented. They can develop that skill if they practice and try, but it's not the way that their cognitive stack is naturally. It's not naturally built for that. And so if they don't spend the time understanding that and learning how to overcome that, they can be so successful and have all of these great ideas, but they don't have the grounding in reality to get it done.
Or they, miss doctor's appointments, or consistently pay bills late, or like that's the type of adulting that we're talking about. It's more of like the structure around your life, like how you're living and making sure things are done on time. And those are all in those little details. And it's so easy as an extroverted intuitive to just be like, that's not fun and that's not interesting. So you can just stay over here until I absolutely have to deal with you. So procrastination is definitely something that can be associated with an ENTP. At the same time, I feel like a lot of ENTPs will be like, oh, but I'm best under pressure. Which might actually be true, and that's fine. But just know that adulting is something that eventually we all do need to come to terms with, even though it really truly sucks and it's really truly not fun. It is something, and you'll sit there and be stressed the whole time about it anyways. So even if it's there for 3 months and just sitting in front of you, you'll be stressed for 3 months. Look, every time that you look at it, you're so smart. You can look at that and be like, I know that has to get done. I just don't feel like doing it right now. And then it's like the day before it's due, you're like, oh, damn, I need to do this right now, you know? But you're stressed about it until that day comes. So just quick tip, if you're watching this and you're a young ENTP, figure out a way to structure your life now before you hit, 30 or 40 and you're like, 30 is still young. So 40, 50, and then you're sitting there like, I have skirted all these things. I've avoided these different things. And now you're having to kind of catch up. Just start it now.
That's wise advice. And something else about ENTPs that is a secret insecurity. About to expose you a little bit. ENTPs have this tendency to want to roam the earth and roam ideas and not ever be tied down. ENFPs have it too. But one of the ways that introverted sensing inferior function can manifest, especially as we get older, is that it means that you have this actual secret desire to want to be tethered to something. You want those totems of your life. You want a place or a person with which you can ground yourself to reality. And so it means that you want to settle down. Now, I'm not saying settle down as in white picket fence it, because a lot of you aren't oriented for white picket fence. If you are, that's awesome. But a lot of you probably aren't. And so you need something with which to ground yourself. And you do have that desire to have some sort of grounding. And it can make you very nostalgic and misremember things. Sometimes you'll remember things that were not positive, but you will kind of like have this sort of rose-colored glasses on it because you do want to have something to ground yourself to. And they can be really unhealthy experiences, jobs, locations, relationships, family members, even all sorts of things, because you're looking for that grounding. So it's really important for the ENTP to build up introverted thinking process to decide, this is my framework, this makes sense to me. And then you can filter back through your experiences and say, this was the thing that I'm going to ground myself with. I'm not going to be fooled by the other stuff. This is the one that makes sense. And if you haven't found it, well, I'll bet you your extroverted intuition process will keep guiding you through the world and you'll find what you're looking for. But you got to be patient. You got to stick it out.
And you have to be connected to that introverted thinking, just like Jessie said. You have to find it. And again, the earlier you can start that introverted sensing as well, the better off you'll be.
That is accurate. So a lot of some stereotypes of ENTPs, and we've already covered them, but one of the other ones I wanted to mention was a lot of ENTPs often get that stereotype of being ADHD. And so we've mentioned this in some other videos, but extroverted intuition can look like ADHD because what will happen is they need to actually physically do something to decide if it's right for them. And so if they're physically doing something, a job, they're in school, they're in some sort of vocational training, and they decide this is not for me, and they drop it. And it looks like they cannot stay dedicated to anything. Or if they are moving from idea to idea. It's not an inability to focus, they can focus. The problem is they need to be actively invested in whatever they are focusing on. Some ENTPs, because of that extroverting feeling process, when they're younger, will do very well in school because they want to appeal to the authority figures in their life. They want to appease them. Sometimes it can go the other way and they can act out in school. But
pushing those boundaries that we were talking about.
Trying to see what will happen if I really get under this teacher's skin. But it can happen in a variety of ways. And so the point is that just because you're an ENTP or you have extroverted intuition at all does not make you automatically ADHD. ADHD is a chemical imbalance that cognitive functions don't have anything to do with. At the same time, if you do have an inability to focus and you do have ADHD, that does not automatically make you an ENTP either. So these two things are not synonymous. So it's important to keep that in mind. The last stereotype I want to cover, and this kind of leads into the role of society when it comes to ENTPs, is ENTPs have this reputation for being very harsh. Their words are very direct. They're very kind of almost curt in their language at times, and it can seem rude or heartless or unfeeling. The thing to know is that ENTPs are very careful with their language, and they are not, the way that they speak is not a representation of how they feel a lot of times. So as somebody who is an extroverted feeler, I know that ENTPs can come across a certain way, but I also know that they have good hearts, and a lot of them, like my friend, can train themselves out of that kind of upfront direct language, and they're very conscious of other people's feelings. So you have to keep that in mind when you're interacting with an ENTP, especially a young one. We keep talking about that because there's a huge ENTP population online who are in their 20s and 30s, and they have a way of speaking that can be very, very, very much misinterpreted. And then people get defensive, and the ENTP's over here I'm just telling you my ideas.
I'm just kind of telling
I'm
you
just
how
talking
it is.
to you.
Yeah.
This is just how I talk. And so many times other people are given those excuses of, this is just how I am. So if other people are getting those get out of jail free cards of that's just how they are, you should have the same understanding when it comes to an ENTP. To show them to understand that they are not coming at you from a place of aggression or anger. They're coming at you from a place of curiosity. And
they're just pretty blunt about it.
Yes, and really just pure, uninhibited curiosity. And that is something beautiful, and it's something to be celebrated. So if you are somebody who's at the receiving end of an ENTP and their curiosity, consider yourself lucky. Because I would not trade my ENTP for the world. So I consider myself pretty lucky.
Now, as for the ENTPs, just know that, and you already do know this, most of you, that you can sometimes come off and rub people the wrong way with just a few of just kind of how you can respond to people, especially, again, as we've been saying, some of the younger ones, or and that's not always the case. It doesn't mean that if you're a 20-year-old ENTP that you're pissing everyone off. That's not what we're saying. But we tend to see it online because those are the forums and the communication that we typically have with these people. So just kind of be aware of that. And again, I know that all of you say that you don't really care. You don't care if you hurt someone's feelings. You don't care what they think. You don't care how they feel. But just tap into yourself a little bit and just kind of check. Maybe I do care. Do I care? Just ask yourself that. And just know that you have a tendency to do that. And instead of owning that and just kind of plowing through people, maybe just do a quick self-check and make sure that that at the end of the day, you're not going to look back on that experience and wish you had done it a different way.
And just to clarify, most of the ENTPs that I actually have a personal interaction with have been overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
And the ENTPs were the very first group I ever went into on Facebook. I started in January, and I went in there and I started asking them all sorts of questions. And boy, I was so prepared to get eaten alive because of all the things that I had read about ENTPs. 99% of the interactions were incredibly positive and were not what I expected at all. So any type can have people who are super misrepresentative of what that type actually can look like, because again, these cognitive functions are patterns of mental processes. They're not indicative of 100% what your behavior is going to look like. So there are patterns of behaviors that are associated with these processes, but that doesn't define you, and it's never meant to limit you. It's only ever meant so that you can explain yourself to others. Because if you are an ENTP and you understand that your blind spot might be introverted feeling and you don't really like introverted feeling is difficult for you, then you know to look out for that when you encounter it in the real world, and you know that introverted thinking is something that is very important to you, and you know that it can come across as boundary pushing or people pleasing, or that you could have a tendency to either get pushed over or to push over others. You can be conscious of that, and you can be careful as you interact with your environment.
Yeah, this is not meant to put you in a box. This is to help you actually kind of get out of boxes and really help you just kind of see how you can come across. And maybe there's some personal growth here, or maybe you feel like you're doing really well in all these areas that we're talking about, and maybe you're just killing it. Like, you're awesome, and there's not much growth for you here. Maybe you just need time or whatever. But this does, hopefully, our point is to give you a language so that your relationships with the people around you in your workplace, in your friendships, your relationships, your marriage, your parent-child, anything like that, that it can just expand your communication and your knowledge of each other. That's really the point.
Exactly. And so society, if you have an ENTP in your life, first off, you're lucky. And second off, just take time to understand them. Don't use them. Don't take advantage of their kindness. Don't take advantage of that extroverted feeling child. And really just work on being patient and being kind and letting them talk out their ideas and being a good sounding board for them. So your role in society, ENTPs, is you need to push the ideas around. You need to, when people have ideas, like, keep doing that.
Yep.
So after all of the things we said, if you don't get anything else from this, like, just know that extroverted intuition is needed in this world, and people need their ideas taken apart. Sometimes even people who are careless on the internet and they comment and they need those little ENTPs to come and say, no, your logic is bad and this is why your logic is bad. Some people need that. It's a valuable skill set to have, to be able to show why the logical reasoning is flawed, because being human is hard.
This should hopefully make it a little bit easier.
Thank you for watching our channel and our video. Hopefully you liked this video.
If you did like this video, which we hope you did, please like and comment, subscribe. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, and Discord, and of course YouTube. So we just appreciate the support so much, and we really hope that you got something out of this video. Or if you're looking for information about your ENTP, if you're in a relationship with one, or you know one and you're trying to get closer to them, then hopefully this helps you out.
And if you do want to volunteer for that project to be interviewed, go ahead and contact us on any of those platforms that Amanda just mentioned, and be in touch.
Yeah, drop a comment below and we will be in touch for sure. And if you have any friends or family that has not interviewed, please send them our way. We would so appreciate it. This has just been an awesome journey, and we're excited to keep going. We have lots of content that we plan on releasing. We have like years worth. So so if you just found us and you're just getting started with us, then please, again, go back. We have so many videos out there for you to watch. And we, again, have so much new content that's going to be coming out. So we appreciate all the support. We love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's gather around the type fire and sing our type fire song. Our MBTITYPOLOGY song. And if you feel uncomfortable, then know there's nothing wrong.